Hello race fans, Keith Collentine here going through the field for the 2019 Chinese Grand Prix, starting with the first driver to drop out. Nico Hülkenberg's luck hasn't changed, Renault's reliability hasn't improved. He was only 0.04 of a second off his teammate Daniel Ricciardo in Q3, but in the race he retired a few laps after his pit stop with a failure on his MGU-K. Did Daniel Kvyat deserve that drive-through penalty for colliding with the two McLarens on the first lap of the race? Some people thought this was very harsh. In the eyes of the steward, Kvyat lost control of his car. If you look back at some past precedents, particularly Max Verstappen and Daniel Ricciardo at the Hungaroring in 2017, there is precedent for this kind of penalty, that you can see why some people thought it tough. Kvyat retired halfway through the race due to the damage on his car. He did a very good job in qualifying, it's worth noting. He was just a few hundredths away from getting into Q3. Lando Norris retired a few laps from the end of the race with damage sustained in that collision with Kvyat. It has to be said, he was never really on the pace of his teammate Carlos Sainz Jr. all weekend. Robert Kubica was puzzled when his Williams suddenly developed oversteer during qualifying and was narrowly out-qualified by teammate George Russell. As for the race, he said the most exciting moment was when he spun on the formation lap. He also commented that it wasn't worth making bold moves at the start of the race because he knew his car didn't have the pace to hold on to them, and so it proved. As for George Russell, he was the first of the two Williams home again, fractionally ahead of Kubica in qualifying. He built up enough of a gap over his more experienced teammate to make a second pit stop at the end of the race. Another solid showing in a very difficult car. Antonio Giovinazzi's second race at the Shanghai circuit wasn't much better than the first, largely due to reasons beyond his control. He wasn't able to set a time in first practice due to problems with his car, and a power unit glitch kept him out of qualifying. In the race, he started on the soft tyres, but that tactic seemed to backfire. He was quickly passed by the Toro Rosso drivers, had to go onto a two-stop strategy, and lost 14th place at the end of the race to Carlos Sainz Jr. It was a frustrating weekend for the McLaren driver as the team weren't as competitive as they had been in the first two races, and he was hit by Kvyat at the start. Haas again had good pace over a single lap and made it into Q3. Unfortunately, neither driver set times once they got there. It seems the team weren't quite on top of when they needed to get to the start-finish line in order to start their final laps. Their race pace wasn't up to scratch again, however. Magnussen was overtaken by Raikkonen and Stroll on his way down the order to 13th. The Racing Point driver kept up his unfortunate record of dropping out in Q1 in every round so far this year. His race was better, however. He made another one of his decent starts, moving up 3 positions, but things started to go wrong when Albon jumped ahead of him in the pits, and his resultant switch to a two-stop strategy only ended up costing him another position. That place was taken by Romain Grosjean. His front wing collapsed during second practice while he was doing his qualifying simulation. Nonetheless, he was the only driver to string all 3 of his best sector times together in qualifying. Like Magnussen, Haas's race pace was his undoing. He was overtaken twice by Raikkonen and blamed blue flags for keeping him from overtaking Alexander Albon for the final point. If you're going to smash your car up so badly that you're not able to take part in qualifying, the least you can do is drive the wheels off it in the race, and that's exactly what Alexander Albon did. He picked off the Williams drivers and Giovinazzi at the start. He ran long on a set of soft tyres, something few other drivers managed to do. His pit stop got him ahead of Stroll, and he held off Grosjean to the flag, redeeming himself for his Saturday faux pas. For the first time since 2016, there was no Kimi Raikkonen in Q3. He said he lost speed on the main straight during his fastest run in qualifying, perhaps because he didn't have a tow from a car in front of him. In the race, he made light work of the Haas drivers to secure 9th position, despite his tyres going off in the second stint. Having been downbeat about Racing Point's chances on Friday, Sergio Perez came within a 10th of a second of reaching Q3 on Saturday. A brilliant start got him up to 8th position, and he clung to it, delivering an excellent points finish for the team. Perez spent much of his race staring at the rear wing of Daniel Ricciardo's Renault. He finally made it to the checkered flag to take his first points for the team, starting and finishing in 7th. His replacement at Red Bull still isn't comfortable in the car, despite the team making progress with its RB15 in China. Pierre Gasly qualified 0.8 of a second off Max Verstappen. In the race, he dropped 40 seconds behind his teammate. Then Red Bull brought him in for a pit stop, put him on a set of soft tyres, and gave him the chance to claim the fastest lap bonus point, which was really the only highlight of his weekend. Charles Leclerc said he'd been lost with his car's setup during practice, something which surely wasn't helped by the technical problem which kept him from doing a race simulation run. He was also critical of his qualifying effort, saying he made quite a few mistakes, but these frustrations surely paled in comparison to what happened in the race. Ferrari ordered him to let Vettel through when it's doubtful Vettel was really very much quicker, and all it really seemed to achieve was putting Leclerc in a position where he couldn't defend 4th place from Max Verstappen, so he fell to 5th. This was an excellent weekend on the whole for Verstappen, though he probably wishes he'd kept his foot in the dying stages of Q3 and got in that lap time, which could have seen him start 4th or even 3rd on the grid. You have to wonder whether he'd been able to beat both Ferraris if he'd started that high. As it was, he had to take advantage of Ferrari's somewhat questionable strategy in order to split Vettel and Leclerc for 4th place. Strangely, Ferrari were 0.7 of a second slower in China this year than they had been 12 months ago. Vettel hinted at this after he crossed the finishing line in qualifying, saying, "We had it, but we know where the pace is." Those hotly debated Ferrari team orders helped him take 3rd place in the race. The top 2 then was the same as it had been in Bahrain. Pole sitter Valtteri Bottas said he lost his lead at the start because of wheel spin as he went over the white line, which let Lewis Hamilton through. Bottas had been the quicker of the 2 Mercedes drivers up to that point, but Hamilton seized his opportunity and was never headed as he scorched off to take his 75th Formula 1 win in the 1000th running of a World Championship race. So which driver impressed you the most during the Chinese Grand Prix weekend? Vote for your driver of the weekend now on racefans.net. For the latest from us, follow @racefans.net on Twitter and Facebook, and hit that subscribe button on the top right so you don't miss our next video.